limit to the contributions. Of course, we must concentrate on the bill.
I will be short. And like others, I want to use the opportunity to really congratulate the people of Ireland who stood shoulder to shoulder, both on the streets of their own estates to stop water meters being installed, and for those who weren't engaged in any of that activity, and many of the people in this House weren't, including the Minister. You must realise that it was quite a sacrifice to people to get up at 5, half 5 in the morning, and often very dark and cold mornings in all sorts of weather, and mobilise with their neighbours to prevent the imposition. For people who got up there in the morning, yeah, the Taoiseach would know all about that. To prevent the imposition of water meters in their estates, and this was done in a very peaceful, civil disobedient and collective way. And I clearly remember a neighbour of mine called Sandra, who spoke to me about a week after being engaged in this activity. She had been suffering from serious depression. Her mental health had really gone down and down since she lost her job as a consequence of the collapse of the economy. I was interested to hear Deputy Cowan say earlier on about the instability that we in this House who opposed water charges have brought to the country, and it's really rich coming from somebody whose party brought all of the economy down around our ears with the banking collapse some years ago. And one of the victims of that was Sandra, who a week after protesting against the metering in her estate said to me, "My morale, my dignity, my self-esteem has been lifted completely because of this, and I've stopped taking antidepressants." What that says to me is that people who engage in shaping their own future by direct action, by collective action, by grouping together with others in solidarity, grow hugely from that. They grow hugely personally, and they grow hugely because they see that they can actually impact on society and make a change to it. That politics is about more than just the 15 minutes in your entire life that you'll spend inside a polling booth ticking 1, 2, 3 on a piece of paper. That politics is about engagement, activity, and trying to shape and determine what sort of society we want to live in. And if nothing else, the water charges movement have proved that. It has proved that people power really, when it is inserted into the arguments and the debates about the country and the world and the economy that we live in, can make an absolutely huge difference. And every individual who engages in that collective people power feels the difference. And that lesson has been learned, Minister, and it won't go away. And it's interesting when you think back the first few months that we spent here before you actually did form some kind of a government with the backing of Fianna Fáil. The discourse was all about the centre, and the centre must hold, and the left and the right, and the disparity between the two sides, and that the centre was the most important thing. And between yourselves and Fianna Fáil, you are doing everything you can to hold the centre, and hence this bill. This bill that is leaving not just the back door, I would argue, but the window and the front door and the skylight open to bring in water charges again at the next opportunity that the next government gets. But in the meantime, the victory lies with the people of this country and the Sandras of this country who fought both locally in their estates and nationally by taking part in marches. I do want to remind everybody that when we started out on this journey, I remember as a councillor in Dublin City Council when John Tierney got the job of heading up Irish Water with a big increase in the salary up to 200,000, I believe. We had a bit of a get-together and we were saying good luck to you, and I remember saying to him very clearly, good luck in the War Department because that's where you're going. And he didn't last that long in the War Department, but the War Department spent a fortune through his leadership on consultancies, on bringing in contractors, on the Dennis O'Brien, not to mention his name, site-serve exercise and trying to put in meters, and ultimately on putting people in prison and on putting them on these huge elongated trials like the Jobstown trial. This has cost the country a fortune, but the people have seen it down and have seen through it, albeit with the suffering and the sacrifice that they had to endure. Those of us who might remember Phil Hogan will remember at the start of the introduction of water charges as the Minister for the Environment, he told everybody in this country that they will ultimately be paying between €500 and €600 a year for their water, and that was roughly what it should cost them. He then said that if we don't comply with bringing in the water meters and paying the charges, our water would have to be cut down to a trickle. He then at another stage threatened to use the PRSI of every man, woman and child in every household to get the cost of the water from them. All of that has been railroaded back, to the point that we are now, and some people in this House are boasting about it, we are now issuing cheques to people who paid their water charges in time for Christmas. This government looks extremely foolish. When you actually think about it in context from start to finish, they look extremely foolish, and they have been extremely foolish with our most precious natural resource. And that's why I want to echo the call from other deputies. We do need a referendum to stop the privatisation of water, because it's not just a sort of an added-on extra. Water is fundamental to life. You cannot survive without it. You can survive without food, as many hunger strikers have done for 70 or more odd days. You won't last more than a week without water. And as it is fundamental to life, and as we hurtle towards climate change and that water is under more and more threat, it is absolutely essential that we do not privatise it, that we do not put it into the hands of the greedy Veolias and Thames and Suez companies who are gaining billions from the privatisation of water in some of the poorest countries across the world. That should never, ever happen in this country. And resistance to it means you don't charge for it. You pay for it through direct taxation. You bring in tax justice, and you make those who are not paying the taxes, as Deputy Boyd Barrett said, has become absolutely apparent from the Parasite papers, that there is loads to be got out there from taxation, and you use that taxation to fund an absolutely essential, crucial service to the conduct of this society. So I'll just shut up now and say hats off to every man, woman and child who engaged in the resistance to this most neoliberal, most objectionable move by this government, the previous government, and I have no doubt, until we get a proper socialist left-wing government, future governments to come.
Deputy O'Brien.